Hey guys, how are you guys doing today? Well, my Twitter has been a buzz, especially in light of what has happened in the crypto space in the last 24 to 48 hours. We all know that I'd filed a right to information application with the Reserve Bank of India about a month ago. We received a response on 4th of June 2019, and wherein Reserve Bank of India claimed that they have not communicated with any other government department or neither received nor sent across any information regarding the draft crypto bill, which talks about banning crypto assets here in India. However, this video is pertaining to the other report that came just the day after the response that we received from the Reserve Bank, and it was by Bloomberg Quint, wherein it stated primarily three things. It stated that the portions of the bill state that, and I have scribbled down some notes. It mentioned about anyone who mines, generates, holds, sells, transfers, dispose of, issue and deal in cryptocurrencies directly or indirectly can land up in jail for up to about 10 years. Now, I can see lots of people getting panicked because of that news, and which is not wrong. I've been receiving lots of random emails regarding this matter. Most of you may be aware, and there are some other experts also sharing their views on it. So I'll also share what my thoughts are. Other than this 10-year term, it also mentions about a 300% penalty on the gains that are made in cryptos, and it also mentions a 90-day time period to actually dispose of all the crypto holdings that you have in your portfolio. So post this bill, of course, there's bound to be panic in the crypto market, and as I stated, that there are other experts in this space who have shared their comments. I've also analyzed their comments, and I totally agree with the comments that they have shared. Primarily, most of the people are saying that, well, it is still a proposal, it is not an official bill, and the journey from bill to an act might take a long time, and it might change shape during that time period. And some people are also calling it a clickbait, wherein Bloomberg Quint actually was asking to pay to find this article and access this article. And of course, this news then got copied to other news channels like Money Control, and someone told me that it also got covered in Dainik Bhaskar and other media platforms. So the question is, what are my thoughts about it? Why? I totally agree with what the other experts in this field are saying, that it is still a bill, and it might change shape till the time it becomes an act. So I totally agree with that school of thought. That should you panic? Should you do anything about it? Well, ideally, you cannot do much about it, and you should not panic because it is still a bill, not an act. However, this video is not just about whether this provision is a bill, whether it is a clickbait, whether it becomes an act or not. I have a different viewpoint to it. Let's think of a theoretical option wherein whatever is mentioned in this article actually becomes true. What if whatever is mentioned, like a 10-year jail time period and mining, generating, holding, selling, transferring, all that stuff, actually becomes prohibited? It is not that these provisions are just out of the blue. Prevention of Money Laundering Act mentions about a 7 to 10-year jail term, so it seems to be copied from that provision. Section 271C of the Income Tax Act talks about a 100% to 300% penalty for tax evasion. So obviously a 300%, it's not something in this proposed bill, is not something that is there for the very first time. It surely exists in the existing law of India as well. And a 90-day time period is equivalent to the 90 days that were primarily given when the ring fencing notification in April 2018 came from the Reserve Bank, wherein the exchanges of India, the crypto exchanges of India, were given a 90-day time period to sever all the relationships with the banking channels. So the question is, if all these things are true, what should you do? What if, in worst case scenario, all these three provisions, the 90-day time period, the 300% tax penalty, and the 10-year jail term in case you mine, hold, secure, mine, hold, trade and all that stuff, do those things in cryptos. What should be done? Well, I'm a firm advocate of this principle that no law in India should be drafted in watertight compartments in isolation. It should surely involve in a democratic process involvement and opinions of people who are getting affected by these things. So in this case, ideally, the crypto asset owners, traders should at least have an opportunity to voice their opinions. I will just take a minute or so to actually take you to another news that happened last week, and because of all the buzz that was happening here in India, perhaps most of you missed that news. I've scribbled down some notes. It was in Japanese. Something very interesting has happened in Japan about a week ago. This was May end, so roughly about 5-7 days from today. On May 31st, the Japanese House of Representation has amended 2 existing cryptocurrency related laws there. The 2 bills are the Payment Services Act and the Financial Instruments and Exchange Act. What have they done in this amendment is that they have given away the definition of virtual currencies, and they have specifically defined what are crypto assets. So crypto assets for the very first time gets defined legally in Japan. That's one. Second, they put in place a framework stating that every exchange, a registered exchange in Japan, has to have a custodian service. So the owners of exchange do not also hold the currency, there has to be a custodian service. Third, earlier they were mentioning things like problematic crypto assets. These were primarily privacy coins like Monero or Zcash. What this amendment has done is that it has now included privacy coins like Monero and Zcash in the definition of this act. So now they are calling not problematic crypto assets, but they are calling it anonymous coins. So even the privacy coins like Monero and Zcash have got recognition. And obviously there are other things like they have again updated the definitions of ICOs and STOs. They also recognize derivatives. Why? Because they feel that derivative market is about 80% of the total crypto trade volumes. So these are things that have happened in Japan. And obviously this bill these amendments get updated from April 2020 in Japan. Why is it that I'm taking the example of Japan? See, it is very important. In the Japanese law, there is contribution by the community at the time of making the law. And the government also takes into cognizance at the time of these amendments proposals and opinions of the people who are affected by such acts. However, in India, we still have laws and regulations in very watertight compartments and being built in isolation. If the news of Bloomberg quint is true, then it contradicts with the responses that we receive with the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India states that we have not communicated with any other department, including Department of Economic Affairs. Even one response in our RTH states that we cannot define digital official currencies, which is mentioned in the proposed bill. It has directed that question to the Department of Economic Affairs. Now the point is, one option other than ignoring whatever Bloomberg quint and other reports are going by saying that, okay, it was just a clickbait. If this is true, one of the opportunities, one of the options that you have is, of course, set up an offshore structure. Wind up your things in India and then go abroad, perhaps take up a permanent residency in some country, or maybe get a new passport, give up the citizenship or the residency in India. That's one option. But is that option, or is that plan A? I don't think so. That should not ideally be plan A. Then what is plan A? Well, plan A is how many of you are willing to put your bodies on the line to talk to the government. Plan A is that while the government drafts and the legal procedure follows its traditional mechanism of becoming a bill and then becoming an act, can there be proactive contributions by the community using beautiful legal literature that is available for Japan. It is not very publicly available. I had to convert things from Japanese to English to understand it, but it's surely available in public domain. How about this? Can we start a signature campaign, get 20,000 signatures, go to the government and say that, see what, this is what Japan is doing. By 2020, they will have a mature, not a preliminary, but a mature cryptocurrencies, or I should say crypto assets regulatory framework. Can India learn from it? It is not that Japan does not have the problem of money laundering. It still has the problem of money laundering. But yet they are not allowing the technology to just go away because of the risks of money laundering. Can India use the beautiful legal literature that is being developed in Japan here in India? It will not come from the lawyers. Let me disappoint some lawyers here. Can we collate and collaborate our efforts in focus and go to the government? How many of you are willing to sign that signature campaign? I'll take it one step ahead. How many of you are actually willing to physically write letters to the Department of Economic Affairs stating that this is what is happening in Japan? Perhaps I can translate the stuff in Japanese to English and share it on my social media. How many of you are willing to physically go to the Department of Economic Affairs office and say that, sir, we are being affected by this thing. I'm a technology geek, I'm a techie, I try to build something on cryptos or on blockchain, and I don't think that an outright ban would be beneficial for our community. Can something on these lines be done? Obviously, the law will take its legal course. But we've seen the Honorable Supreme Court judgment is, well, it's been, what, more than a year, with little progress there. We understand that, of course, Supreme Court has many more important cases to handle. But can a representation, and a proactive representation from people who are legitimately wanting to be part of this community, go proactively to the government, approach the government, and then involve their own thoughts and opinions in the draft that is being drafted as the cryptocurrency bill? Do you think that that option is far more democratic in nature? How many of you are willing to do that thing? So what I can do is that I can start a campaign, maybe in next 48 hours. We can draft something on the lines of Japan, maybe a simple thing only. Obviously, we need to customize it to the Indian requirements, but at least we have legal literature available of a country which is more developed than us, and laws which are adopted by the House of Representatives there. If something like this excites you, if something like this you feel is important and relevant in addition to whatever is happening or being done by the lawyers in the Honorable Supreme Court in the ongoing case, then do write to me. Do like, share, subscribe this video. And in case you are interested in being part of that change.org or some other forum that we might use for the signature campaign, approach the government and then see how things work. All I can say is that, well, the time to act is right here and right now. It's very easy to sit back and just ignore the news and say that, okay, this is just a clickbait, maybe Bloomberg, Quint earned something out of it. But what if this is true? How many of you are willing to take that effort today instead of just regretting it when it becomes the law? We hope that it does not, in the same shape and manner, does not become the act. But what if it becomes, then instead of regretting it later, let's take action right now. If you're interested in being part of it, do buzz me on Twitter. Do write some comments here on YouTube, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much for watching.